Welcome back to MFO, everybody. I'm Mark Fisher. Today we're going to be talking about dragging a worm. And it's something that I've done quite a bit. Dragging a shaky head or a Texas rig worm. Dragging any kind of bottom bait, to be honest. And kind of came across something that I wanted to share with you when it comes to dragging a worm that I think makes a lot of sense, and something quite honestly that I haven't paid attention to, but I'm going to as the season gets going. So guys, stick around. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Mark Fisher. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you guys when you tune in. We know that we've been putting out this content, and we appreciate you guys loyally following and checking it out and sending in your comments and hitting that like button and things like that. We would absolutely appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Tell friends about it, and kind of let's bring some more people into the Mark Fisher Outdoors community. So today we're talking about dragging a worm. And I know a lot of us do it. It's a great summertime technique. And when I say dragging a worm, guys, I'm talking about anything that we do on the bottom, short of a Carolina rig. For this episode, I'm not talking about a Carolina rig, but pretty much anything, any bottom bouncing, bottom working type bait that you're moving slowly across the bottom. And let me get to what I'm talking about. We need to think about what a bass does when it bites a bait. We know that the bass inhales a bait. And when that bass inhales a bait, it's inhaling everything that is around that bait. So if a bait is suspended in the water, it's inhaling the water and the bait fish or the bait or whatever it is, the prey. It's inhaling that into its mouth. And then what it's doing is it's exhaling or moving excess water through its gills to get rid of everything but the desired prey that it wanted to eat. So the water is going through the gills, and the prey is actually what's going in its mouth and then into the crushers and then down its throat. When a fish is eating something off the bottom and it inhales to suck that prey up off the bottom, it's not only inhaling the prey and it's inhaling water, but it's also sucking up any of that loose debris that might be on the bottom. Silt, dirt, muck, any small particles that are along the bottom. And this is the thing that I'm talking about today, because we typically think about, or at least I'm telling you what I've always thought, is that I want to maintain bottom contact as I'm drawing that bait across the bottom, as I'm working that bait across the bottom. And yes, it's true to the extent that I want that bottom bait to be along the bottom to keep it in the fish's strike zone. But the reality is that I believe what a fish is doing is actually taking the most opportune time to actually strike that bait. So in other words, if I'm moving my bait along the bottom and that bait goes through some muck and it stirs up some muck and it's creating a little dust cloud and thing, that might draw the fish's attention to that bait moving through the muck. But it may not suck it up immediately in that muck. Instead, it might wait for one of two things. Either my bait to clear that muck and get onto a rock or gravel or something a little less silty, or it may wait for me to lift that bait and hop it a little bit and get it clear of the muck, at which point that bass will strike that bait, because when he sucks it in, he's not going to be ingesting all of that crud because he has to get rid of and expel all of that junk. And I feel like that's just a natural kind of way that again, we know that animals don't exert energy when they don't need to. It's just a simple fact of nature that they will take. When we talk about bass being opportunistic feeders, opportunistic means not only are they going to take the easiest meal that presents itself, but they're going to also, in most cases, take a meal at its most opportune time when it doesn't potentially negatively impact them. And so, again, the application to this is, as we're working bottom baits, I think that we want to maintain bottom contact, but we also want to occasionally hop that bait out of direct contact with the bottom, so as to give the fish an opportunity to inhale that bait when it isn't right up along the bottom, especially if we're in kind of mucky or silty kind of situations. If we're along rock or if we're along gravelly kinds bottom, less important. But still, I do think that there's a benefit to hopping, and again, I'm not talking about very much, just a little bit, get that bait off the bottom, see if that doesn't draw more strikes than when you're just crawling that bait across the bottom. Obviously, that hopping motion also creates a difference, and we've talked about this in other episodes. If a bait is moving along the bottom and a fish is following it, giving that hopping motion may just trigger that bite in that the fish is following it, but when the bait looks like it might be fleeing or something along those lines, that might trigger the fish to bite. That, along with the fact that when it sucks the bait in, it's not going to ingest kind of some of that crud, is also in your favor in terms of enticing that strike. I'm going to pay attention to this when I'm dragging a worm this summer and kind of see whether it has an impact and whether it gives me just a few more bites in my worm fishing. And I would suggest that you do the same. Guys, we appreciate you tuning into the channel. We'll see you again tomorrow for another episode of Mark Fisher Outdoors. Take care, everybody.